Hello and welcome to a new episode of our daily program, The World Today. I'm Yasmin Bakir, and for the next 25 minutes we're going to be shedding more light on the major items that have been tackled on the national and the international newspapers. And there's a number of issues that are still on hold, possibly maybe the same files that we keep bringing them up on and on again. But as the days pass, there's always some developments going on across the region and in the entire world as well. We're very much delighted to have joining us here in the studio this afternoon to shed more light on our articles that we're going to be discussing and possibly give us a further analysis on what's going on out there. We're very much delighted to have Ezzt with us in the studio. She's a journalist. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start off with Al-Ahram Online, and we're going to be talking about the article that speaks of Russia's strikes, which have helped actually turn around the situation in Syria, and that is according to the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who during his annual news conference in Moscow, Russia, he had noted many points regarding the situation in Syria, and he spoke about the airstrikes by the Russian military in support of the forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad, who have helped him or them in Russia turn the tide in Syria. And that action of the Russian Air Force is in response to the request of the Syrian leadership. And the article went on speaking a lot about what the Russians have managed to achieve in a very short time and how it managed to show to the world the true image of Daesh and actually not just that, but how to target them and where to target them, and in a diplomatic sense, making the United States look embarrassing. How do you sort of judge the current status in Syria after all the help that Russians have managed to do regarding Daesh in particular?
It started to get more complicated in Syria because the main struggle mainly is between US and Russia, and what's happening now that even the Geneva agreement or talks is getting more and more delayed, because Russia kind of refused the list of names who were supposed to be representing the opposition, and they're suggesting another list of names, and it's getting kind of complicated because Russia is now trying to prove their situation compared to US. So it's turning to be between US and Russia more than...
And Syria stuck in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
While Russia and the United States might have some kind of rising tensions regarding certain areas in the region, yet they still remain well off as both leading countries in the world on all levels, whether it's political, economic, or even diplomatic. So now that they have different strategies towards Daesh, how would that change the scenario in Russia, in Syria rather, especially that the Geneva talks are going to take place again on Friday, and all parties are trying to hopefully bring all sides together to sort of work towards having a united stance towards Syria. How far do you think these talks in Geneva will be going any positive?
I guess when they first agree on the representatives, it's gonna go forward. It's all about the countries between US and Russia, and who's supporting the American situation and who's supporting the Russian one. And yes, it's really all about competition between two leading countries, as you said, trying to prove their leading situation all over the Arabic world.
Yes, now we do know, of course, that Saudi Arabia also plays a role very much against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his government. Yes. Iran, on the other hand, is backing very much Syrian President Bashar al-Assad along with Russia and China. So the way here and the ratio is going to be very much, not in the perfect equation, if I may say. due to other countries apart from Russia and the United States. How far do you think these talks will affect these countries that are not, on the front line?
Yes, they're not in the front line, but it's also like it's affecting the talks pretty much, and even the Egyptian situation, it's trying to be biased as much as possible, because kinda they're trying to support the Saudi Arabia refusal of Bashar al-Assad, and still they can't interfere that much in the
internal affairs, of course.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
So they're trying to be as biased as possible. The struggle between Saudi Arabia and Iran is going furthermore recently, after also what happened between Iran and Saudi Arabia, of course, and the ambassadors there in both countries. So we will see. We should wait and see.
Yes, and speaking of Iran as well, because Iran seems to be reflecting very positively after the lifting of the sanctions by the US and the UN. And we moved to Egypt Independent, and then we read an article about deals and warm words flow as the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani visits Europe. He's visiting Italy. He's going to also be visiting France. And Italy and Iran have signed billions of dollars of business deals on Monday at the start of the tour by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, which is aimed at refusing his nation's ties with the West after the economic sanctions. We are talking about a very strong delegation that is heading to Europe, 120 delegations. They come with a lot of resolutions, especially as the world is facing a lot of struggle regarding the decreasing fuel oils and petrol as well worldwide. So it seems to be that the lifting of the sanctions against Iran after they've reached to a deal regarding their nuclear program is going to give an economic boost and shift to Iran somewhere else than maybe no one else have thought it would happen this far. Again, I'm talking here about the effect this would have in the Middle East region, particularly countries who are very much against Iranian policies. So we have to differentiate here the economic aspect from the political aspect. Definitely they're both interrelated. But how do you see the visit of the Iranian president to Europe as a first step?
Well, the oil issue and the economic struggle between the countries takes us back to the political one. I kind of disagree with you. It's all about the political struggle is all about the economic one. Even what's happening in Libya, what's happening in Syria, what's happening all over the Middle East, it's all also struggling over Iran and Turkey and US and Russia, and it's all linked directly, have direct relation to the oil in the whole area.
So, but the signing of the deals between Iran and Italy, then he's going to be going to France as well. What kind of message would that give to the countries that were not in favor very much of Iran being, expanding in its powers and in its economic role?
Yeah, they should just consider that it's taking us to a whole new level. It's trying to prove a new power and economic power, which is gonna affect directly what's happening. So yes, this is a huge step, and we should be concerned about it because it's gonna definitely affect what's happening in the area.
Yes, let's move to the World Bulletin, go internationally now, and we speak on an article of Israel which approves 153 new settler homes in the West Bank. Israel's defense ministry has approved to plan in building 153 new settler homes in the West Bank, and Hagit of France said that the plans were adopted last week and that it involves small settlements in various areas in the North and West Bank area. And according to the NGO, the move marks the end of an informal construction freeze in the Palestinian territory that had lasted for 18 months. the settlements are expanding, and it has become a true fact and a reality on the ground that it has become and is going to still more further by time become difficult to sort of control the dramatic expand of the Israeli population, so that if you want to talk again about any peace deal, it would be very difficult to actually point out where you want to place. Like the Palestinians have been scattered all around, and it's really sad because by time they might not even be existing there, which is an unfortunate truth. I'm not going to talk about the role of the UN, but let me talk about the role of the Arab League, because that is what concerns us as the Arab world. Where is the Arab League from all that? And if it does hold any meeting, apart from signing out declarations, what other concrete moves can the Arab League do?
Sadly, what's happening now in Palestine is what Israel have been planning for it since ages now. And what's happening, what we were just discussing now, it just taking the Arab League away from what's happening in Palestine, and the new updates there. And also, unfortunately, Israel is trying to use everything to gain more time, yes. And they're claiming also that children are holding knives against Israeli army, and by that they have the right to kill them. So they're trying to do everything to do their achievements during this period, because everybody is just busy about what's happening
with their own internal affairs.
Yeah.
It seems to be that nobody's focusing anymore on the peace process as it was a priority, an Arab goal.
So it was mainly the only thing happening all over the Middle East, the only war or struggle or whatever we can call it, that was just Palestine. Now we have Syria, we have Palestine, we have Libya, we have a lot of
other files.
Yeah.
But even before that, nothing much was been done. That doesn't. Nothing,
Sadly,
I think,
yes.
seems to stop Israel from, going on and carrying out its plans. Yeah. Finally, we have an article with Al Ahram online again, and Tunisia police protest over pay in new test for the government. Several thousands of Tunisian police marched to protest to the presidential palace on Monday to demand more pay in the latest pressure on the Prime Minister Habib Ezzd's government after a week of riots over the jobless. There was a curfew that has been imposed on Tunisia. It was lifted, cut short to 2 hours, I believe,
yes.
Starting from today, as they said that the situation seems to be under control. While the government refuses to admit that they have a really serious issue, they say it's more of a stable situation. But it's a bit triggering because Tunisia, a lot of political changes have happened. I don't know where exactly is the default, but for people who have decided, just along other countries like Egypt, to wait for 30 years before actually standing up for themselves and their rights and saying enough is enough, they don't expect that things would go definitely the way they want in a very short period of time with all these restorations that needs to be taken. So how do you see the situation in Tunisia? Where do you think this is going to be heading?
I think Tunisia is a lucky country. The funny part is here in Egypt we're always comparing what's happening here to Tunisia, which is not unfortunately correct, because even the protesters, they admit that they had political achievements and they had political gains, and they're protesting for just economic demands. And this is actually really, really objective from them. They're admitting the good part and bad part about it. So with the government dealing with that, they have to be really, really careful about it, because when it starts like that, if they didn't find the needed response from the government, the demands are going to be higher and higher. So they have to deal with it as economic demands.
Yeah, but I mean, as a journalist and, roaming around and, trying to experience what's happening in reality on the ground, face to face, and as a young generation, I'm speaking to you as well, don't you think that people are misusing their freedom? I mean, when you are free to choose whatever you want and ask for your right, does this give you the right to go and destroy, to vandalize, to riot, to break down and burn down public properties and private properties like a little baby just because your demands are not being met instantly? I mean, when you speak about the government knowing how to cleverly deal with this, don't you think that there are red lines that individuals should know that this is the barrier and that they should stop there out of their own self-respect?
Yes, of course. I'm totally against any chaos and any violence. It's not about violence. When it first started in Tunisia and even in Egypt, it was, I don't know what to call it, but it was really, really peaceful demands and peaceful protesters. But you can't just control it. You can't control everyone. And there's yes, you can call it misuse of the protesters, and there's sometimes violence instead of just sticking to the peaceful protests. But I don't know how they should deal with that. Mm-hmm. It's their job. Mm-hmm. It's the government job to deal with that and just differentiate between the peaceful demands and the violence, and deal with violence as violence.
So finally, before we end our episode, how far do you think this situation could be getting out of control in Tunisia, and how far do you think, if it's true or not, because there have been a lot of analysts speaking about how this could be related or affecting Egypt, although it's logically speaking each country has its own nature and each country is an individual country and each country deals with this internal affairs differently. But what is your take on that as a journalist?
I agree with you. It's totally different. The situation here is totally different from Tunisia, and here we're facing a difficult stage. Yesterday, for example, there was no one in the streets, so no, it's really different.
Because it was cold.
Yeah, maybe
because it was raining as well.
Yes,
I wanted to shop yesterday, but I couldn't because it was cold.
Yes. But maybe also they were trying to be away as much as possible from the calls from Muslim Brotherhood to go and protest, because we're done with them. So Egypt is different. Tunisia now, I guess it's under control, because even they shortened the curfew, and this give a sign that no, it's under control, because if it wasn't like that, they shouldn't shorten the...
Yes, but of course, we live in a world where you never expect what's going to happen next. So, May Ezzt, a journalist, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your insight and for your fruitful information. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And that brings us to the end of our episode of The World Today. And do stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. And we'll also be joining you in future episodes as we bring the latest updates and the developments in the crucial files that the Middle East still remains to witness. I'm Yasmin Bakir, signing off.